things. Welcome to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert. Sharon is taking the evening off, but tonight we're going to talk with a man who has made it a project, a ministry, if you will, to go out and speak to people who've been contacted by what they believe to be aliens, extraterrestrials, or who have seen UFOs. He is the author of the best-selling Nephilim trilogy, the nonfiction book Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, and a new interactive ebook called The Alien Interviews. We're proud to welcome back to PID Radio Lynn Marzulli. Lynn, good to talk with you again.
Derek, thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure to be here, sir.
The Alien Interviews, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, basically it's this. I was on one particular radio show, and the host set me up. In other words, for the first half an hour, no matter what I brought to the table, he immediately resorted to ad hominem attacks against me or the person I was quoting or the experience I was talking about or the sighting or whatever. He would just, no matter how much evidence I would bring or, talk about, he would immediately negate and was just very skeptical. In the second half hour of the show, he did a 25-minute diatribe on why there's no such thing as UFOs, why this is just a bunch of hot air. And I was incensed. He gave me about 2 minutes to give some sort of a rebuttal. And I was incensed. And I said, this is absurd. And I went back. I do like a monthly news magazine, and we have different people that come on the record. It's all written format. You can get it on my website, lamarzulli.net. It's monthly. It's $1.50 a month, and we have a lot of different people on it. Well, I realized that I had interviewed a lot of fascinating people in the prior year. For instance, Dr. Jacobs, Dr. Roger Lear, Dr. Jesse Marcel, Dr. Lynn Katai, and Dr. Wanger. As well as other people. And all these people had actually come on the record in a written interview format discussing different experiences, different aspects of the UFO phenomena, which was just fascinating because the interviews themselves, oftentimes, one-on-one like this is great. It's candid. It's fantastic. But when you write something, it's a whole different venue. People are very careful what they're writing, and they have time to think about their paragraphs. So on one hand, what we're doing now is wonderful and great for spontaneity. On the other hand, for some sort of perhaps a more in-depth conversation, nothing like a written format. And that's what this is. And I realized that I had many interviews already done, and so I began to compile the book. And then, of course, I sought other people and rounded it out. One time we had about 23 people that had actually come on the record for the alien interviews, and we edited it down to 17. The reason why we did that is we just wanted the interviews that really were from people that had one-on-one, first-hand experience with close encounters of the first, second, or third kind, fourth kind, actual contact. And that's what we that's what my editor and I decided on, and that's why it's down to 17 people. But to round that out, the main reason was to provide a platform, a body of evidence to give to the skeptic. And that's why I mentioned those people, and I'll say them again: Dr. Jacobs, Dr. Roger Lear, Dr. Jesse Marcel, retired Major George Fowler, Dr. Lynn Katai, Dr. Wanger. You've got 5 or 6 different PhDs here from all different fields. These people are highly respected in what they do. And then you've got a variety of other people that come on. For instance, Joe Jordan, Whitney White, who's a MUFON investigator. Whitley White Ashley is a reporter in and around the Stevensville area. Chuck and Stan Moser that came on the record regarding cattle mutilations that happened right on their ranch. A couple by the name of Matt and Laura were driving home one night and had close encounters of the first kind where the craft flew back and forth over the road in front of their car. Very unnerving. Lynn Dickey comes on the record, and she was a woman that was actually a contactee, was communicated telepathically by these entities, believed that they were benign, that they were benevolent, and went along with their program at least for a while, and then she finally, was able to get out. Travis Short gives us a wonderful update on the Mothman, and Lawrence Gray, of course, actually had this thing manifest in his room some odd 40 years ago and used Spiritual Warfare 101, said the blood of Jesus, and this entity, which he described as wickedness, began to dissipate and move back into the dimension from which it came. So the reason why I wrote the book was to assemble this body of evidence for the skeptic and go, look, guys, you have to at least admit that we may disagree as to what the phenomena is, and some of the people I mentioned have completely different worldviews than I do, different paradigms than I do. But one thing, even though we may disagree as to what the phenomena is, we can at least agree that the phenomena is real, it is burgeoning, and it's not going away. way. And so that's really the essence of the book. So for the skeptic or the person who has no idea about UFOs, it's a great primer, a great way to start. And because it's an ebook and an interactive book, even if we go to hard copy on this, which there's now talk of, even if we go to hard copy on this book, there'll still be within the book linking to my website, where all those links that are in the ebook will be there available on the website. So you have like a special code word. You'll land on a landing page and it'll be chapter 1, here are the links, chapter 2, here are the links, Dr. Roger Leir interview, here are the links. That's if we go to hard copy. Mm-hmm. But because it's an ebook right now, it's so interactive. You download it as a PDF. All the links are live, and you just one click away from going to Dr. Leir's site or Dr. Lynn Katai's site or Lawrence Gray or whatever and getting more information about it. So for the person who wants to, like, let's say, if a novice who knows nothing about this, it's a real eye-opener because these are some of the heavy hitters. And for the person who's traveled in it for a while, it's a great refresher course, and you'll learn a lot more. It sort of puts pieces together at the end.
Now, you're saying this is geared to the skeptic. You're talking about skeptics who don't believe that there is such a thing as unidentified flying objects or extraterrestrials, cattle mutilations, that this is all fiction, mass hallucination, or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
And, many people in the church are that way, Derek. We both know that. They look at the whole thing and they just, look at you like you're cross-eyed. I mean, it's just crazy.
Now, you mentioned Stephenville. This was one of the very well-reported and documented events that took place about a year ago. There were also a number of sightings that took place in the UK just within the last couple of months, all over the United Kingdom. What is the sense that you got during the course of these interviews from people? Now, you talked about the Stephenville, Texas incident. Mm-hmm. What sense did you get from the people who witnessed that? What did they take away? How did they interpret what they saw?
Well, Ricky Sorrell, for instance, was one of the gentlemen that I interviewed there, and probably between a half a dozen and a dozen times, somewhere in there. I didn't keep a running log of actually how many phone conversations we had, but it was more than 6 and probably less than 12, somewhere in there. And we discussed the phenomena at length. I sent him my books, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, and after he had read it, I talked to him about it, and basically one word sums up Mr. Sorrell's experience. He was overwhelmed. He used the word, several times. I was overwhelmed by the experience, what I saw. And who wouldn't be? He's out deer hunting. He gets caught up in some brambles. He looks up. There's a craft which he can't imagine how big it is. He looks in all directions and can't see the edge of this thing. That's how large it was. At one point he thought about shooting it and then didn't. And then the craft silently moved overhead at treetop level, moved in the distance, began to turn at a 45-degree angle, and then went up and out of range. An experience like that, to say the least, is unnerving. And he was overwhelmed. In other words, his entire worldview was completely challenged at that point. And who wouldn't be? And this is my point. This is why I call it the Great Deception. I mean, I named it that in the second book of the Nephilim trilogy. One of the characters, Johanan, calls it the coming Great Deception. It's not a biblical term. It's a term that I kind of invented from this character in the Nephilim to coin what is coming, the coming Great Deception. And when this thing hits, it's like Ricky Sorrell's. It's like by that time it's too late. You're already overwhelmed. Your mind's done. You're looking at this thing going, oh my God, we're not alone. And we're open. The person who's looking at this thing is open to whatever information. Let's say one parks over the city someplace and begins to download certain information to television sets, right? Which is what I think is going to happen at some point in time. And I realize that sounds like science fiction. But you know what, folks? All that stuff we can do now. Tap into the satellite and beam stuff around the world. Well, anybody with that kind of a technology, nuts and bolts technology to fly at 20 miles an hour, a craft over a mile wide, hello, what are we looking at here? And that's what they'll do. So people will be ripe for this great deception. People will believe a lie. This dovetails into prophecy, which I know we've talked about before, specifically the prophecies where Jesus talks about that the elect would be deceived if that were possible, men fainting from fear from what is coming on the earth. 2 Thessalonians, that the revealing of the Antichrist will not come until the great apostasy, the great falling away happens first. Satan comes with all signs and lying wonders. Don't be deceived. I mean, we hear it over and over and over again. And